Well, thank you all for joining us today. So, I'm Angela Johnson. I'm the founder and co CEO of Coalition of Black Excellence. We're an all volunteer run 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to unify and elevate the Black community. So, a few quick notes about today's session. It will be recorded and available on our YouTube page and at cbenonprofit.org. You'll be muted throughout the session. And as I mentioned, please keep your camera off until the last 30 minutes. We'll open it up for you all to ask questions to Shellye directly. So I'm so excited to dive right into this conversation with Shellye. Thank you so much for joining us today, Shellye.
I'm thrilled to be here, Angela. Thanks so much for hosting me.
Absolutely. So you are about a month away from the launch of your book,
Yay.
Unapologetically Ambitious, Take Risk, Break Barriers, and Create Success on Your Own Terms. I love that title. But what has it been like launching a book right now in COVID-19?
Oh my gosh, nothing like I expected. So last year when I got together with a publisher and we put together, okay, here's the plan, et cetera, I was supposed to have this book tour and I'd actually planned, okay, fine, I probably will not be home from about, September until November. Well, obviously none of that's happened. So the book tour is canceled. There's no travel, and you welcome now to my studio. So this is basically, right, the advertising. This is my virtual launch spot as I try to indeed increase awareness of the book and make people aware, but all from my living room.
I love it. Yeah, it tells you the power of the virtual platforms these days.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the title, Unapologetically Ambitious. Why was that the title that you focused on for this book?
It's really interesting, Angela, because I actually had the book written and I still didn't have a real title. I knew that I wanted ambition in it someplace because so many times we're told you're ambitious and it's not a compliment. And that's just ridiculous, right? So I think I'm an ambitious person. I think everybody has the right to be ambitious. So I knew I wanted ambition in it. The unapologetic piece, that really stemmed from a conversation with some friends who were talking about the fact that, women say, I'm sorry so much. And I said, I think women are conditioned from birth to apologize, because yes, we apologize when we do something wrong, but that's only maybe 10% maybe of the times we apologize. All the rest of it is to make people feel better, to show empathy, to show we care, to smooth feathers. I feel like we use it like salt. We just put it on things to make it go better, right? And yet it's actually seen as a sign of weakness when people hear us apologizing all the time. So I thought, that's it. That's it. Unapologetically Ambitious. That's the title of this book, because that's what we all have a right to be. So.
I love it. Sorry, are you hearing an echo? Oh no.
I am not.
Okay, I'll keep going. So I had the fortunate opportunity to be one of the people to read the manuscript of your book, and I have to admit, if someone is sort of casually browsing through your Wikipedia page, the takeaway is largely just how much of a phenomenal woman you are and how your career has been. You're one of high tech's first female African-American CEOs. You're frequently featured in Forbes, New York Times, Business Insider. You were an executive at IBM, president of Blockbuster.com, CEO of MetricStream, and now you're on Fortune 500 boards, Verizon, Nordstrom, Roper Technologies, and Okta. And so that's enough for people to say, wow. But the thing that really captured me about your book and really drew me in was how vulnerable you were and how willing you were to share your story about all the other aspects of your life, your family, your kids, and some of those, tough choices in making calls on this journey of a really successful career. So why was that vulnerability important to you in this book and for the audience that you hope to reach?
Oh, it was critical. It's why I wrote it, because too many stories are, oh, I did this, then this, then this, then bam, right? I'm now CEO, or I'm now whoever it is that I am. And you know what? It doesn't work that way. There's all kinds of challenges and problems and near-death experiences and tragedies and, personal doubt and all of this stuff that happens. So I wanted to share all that, because it's important for people to realize that, hey, when you feel that way, it doesn't mean that you're not capable. It doesn't mean that you can't still aspire. It doesn't mean any of those things, because most people rising, growing, taking risks, they all feel that way. So I wanted to share it to help others say, okay, Shellye had this too. She got through it. I can get through it, right? Because it really just irritates the heck out of me, Angela, that so many people don't get the opportunity to contribute even half of their capability because they don't get the opportunities. You know, the odds for a lot of us are just not in our favor, and we need to do things to help us improve our odds. So I thought part of helping others improve their odds was sharing my stories. How did I improve the odds? How did I get through all these challenges? And I wanted them to see the real me. I've always been a very, you've known me for a long time, I've always been a very candid, open, direct person. I mean, I'll answer anything. So just as a highlight for those of you asking questions, I will answer anything. And if I'm not comfortable, I'll tell you, but I've yet to be uncomfortable. So feel free to push. But anyway, but that's why I wrote it, because I wanted to share that, you know, it's more than just hard work and being ambitious to succeed. It takes more than that. So.
Yeah, and you talk a lot about the choices and this distinction between sacrifices and choices that I thought was a really interesting discussion, because a lot of people say, you know, I make sacrifices, that, you know, I sacrifice this for my family and that. Can you talk a little bit about that and why, you know, that was a sort of a theme throughout your book on sort of those distinctions?
Yes, it really was. I have an aversion to the word sacrifice, because in my mind, if I make a sacrifice, I'm doing it for someone else. You know, whatever it is I'm doing or I'm sacrificing, I'm doing it for someone else's benefit, which may not necessarily be mine. Well, I feel like when you do that, you kind of give away your power. So I make choices, absolutely, but then I own those choices. So I might choose not to do something, not to be there, right? Not to whatever, but it's my choice. I didn't do this for someone else's benefit only, right? Which puts me more kind of in this martyr thing. So that's why I'm really distinct about making sacrifices versus making choices. It's a power, and it's important that we keep our power.
I love that. Yeah. And I guess in that same vein, you know, you have a whole chapter on, you know, there's no such thing essentially as work-life balance, right? which I think is, everyone's like, wait, what do you mean? I thought that's the goal. Like, we're all trying to reach the work-life balance. And so, you know, as you kind of talked about choices and making that, can you kind of talk about some of those, some of that advice and some of those experiences for you that kind of led to that, you kind of crafting that chapter that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I just have a problem with the term work-life balance, because what is a balance? I mean, close your eyes. What's a balance? A balance is this thing, right? This pedestal with a bar across the top, two scales, and they are equal at all times. It's static. Life is not static, ever. Life is a roller coaster. And to think that we should be holding this balance all the way through the roller coaster and never have to shift is ridiculous. I feel like that whole term was developed just to make us all feel perpetually guilty, because you're never completely equal on all sides at all time. So no, I put that aside. I believe in work-life integration. I am one person. And so, yes, do I have priorities that are driven by my business and career and aspirations? I do. Do I have another set of priorities that are driven by my family, my community, right, et cetera? The answer is I do. Well, I don't try to like balance, okay, do one, do one, do one, do it. No, I put them together and say, all right, together, now what's my priority across? And let me make decisions consistent with that. So I believe in integrating life. I believe in trying to figure out how to do multiple things at the same time, right, that help you move forward on all fronts. And I talk about that. I talk about things like, man, when you look at your choices and decisions, I decided to commute twice in my career, where I left my family behind and I would fly away for the week and then come back on weekends. Well, why did I do that? It seemed to be the right decision across a set of priorities. At the time, I didn't want to disrupt my kids in terms of where they were. The first one I knew was going to be a relatively short stint, so moving and moving made no sense. And yet at the same time, was I lonely when I was by myself? The answer is absolutely. Did my kids miss me? Yes, they did. So did we make a choice? But the balance in terms of, all right, am I optimizing to the set of priorities the best that I can be? That was a decision that we made. Now, everybody makes different decisions, and that's okay. The key is to make them according to your priorities and your values.
Yep. I appreciated that aspect of the book too, that, you know, you're sort of encouraging the reader to go through this sort of self-reflective process as you read the book, to think about, you know, what does this mean for my life? I might not have the goal of being, I might not have made a plan when I was in high school to be CEO like Shellye Archambeau. But actually, let's just dive back into that point, actually. So yeah, I tend to think of myself as someone who has a plan and can execute. But when I was reading about your story, I'm like, man, this takes planning to a whole nother level, and just your ability to, can you talk about sort of that early stage of life, and how, you know, your path to CEO that you envisioned for yourself, how that, you know, became a conversation, and the partner that you picked, your kids, everything, and how sort of, you know, how that story came to fruition for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to step back just a little bit to kind of explain, all right, why was I such this, you know, this planner, et cetera. Well, you know, I grew up in the racially charged 60s, and the world made it very clear to me that the odds were just not in my favor to get anything I wanted. More than that, it also made it clear that if I wasn't super observant and really careful, you know, I could get hurt, because I did get hurt. You know, I was not only verbally abused and yelled at, but I was physically beat up. I mean, it was not a good experience. So what that did, though, was it actually pushed me to realize that if I controlled my environment better, I could protect myself. And then you layer on top of that the fact that I was competitive. And then you layer on top of that the fact that I grew up in a household that, how would I say it? My parents taught us from the very beginning that life is not fair. So it's nothing to bemoan. They're not going to console us. It is a fact.
Yep.
Now, what are you going to do about it? So you put all of those things together, and what that did was manifest inside of me this whole notion of, all right, I need to improve my odds. And I can improve my odds if I think about what it is I'm trying to do, and then put a plan in place to go do it. And every time I did, it worked out. And so I said, okay, this is the way to live life. This is the way to improve my odds to get what I want. And so, yes, a guidance counselor asked me when I was 16, you know, you have the obligatory guidance counselor conversation. What do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to go to college and get a job. Just what do you want to do? And at the time, I'm like, I don't know. She said, what do you like to do? I said, I love running my clubs. I'm head of the American Field Service, president of National Honor Society, I mean, all stuff. And she said, oh, running a business is not much different than running a club. Pull people together to a common mission objective. And I went, done. And literally, I thought about it that quickly, because now I had a goal. All I needed was a goal. Did I know what exactly that meant? No, I had to go look it up. Oh, CEOs run companies. Okay, I mean, it was just crazy. So, but that's why I set that as a goal. And then what I've always done, Angela, said, all right, so if that's the goal, what has to be true for me to achieve that goal? And then how do I make it true? And so, yes, it therefore led into not just go to Wharton, get the best degree I can, right? Go into tech because it's a growing industry, but it also led to what kind of partner did I want for my life partner? Because if that was my goal, I needed to make sure I found a partner who saw that as our goal, right? Who wanted to support us to be able to go do that. So it factored into everything that I did. I was very intentional. And in the book, I talk about just being intentional about the things you do. Not that you have to become CEO, no. But we all have aspirations. We all have those dreams. And the key is to turn a dream into a goal by putting in place a plan and setting a timeline. And I share some of the approaches and strategies on how to do that, and all the hurdles and issues and obstacles that come in the way, but how to get over those too. So yes.
Yeah, the intentional piece also stood out to me. So I actually, when I read your book, it was perfect timing when you gave it to me, because I was at this sort of stage in my career, and I think a lot of members of this, the CBE community are, have been working for 3, 5 years plus, 10 years plus for others, and so it's sort of this, every couple of years you kind of go through this, question about, what are my goals, what's next for me, what, promotional opportunities. And the one aspect of your book, I had to sort of channel my inner Shellye when I was sort of going through this process of, this intentionality and communicating what it is that you want. And so, you talk a lot about sort of the importance of articulating your goals and making it known. And can you kind of give a little bit of a sneak peek on some of the advice and the reason why you thought sort of the way we communicate to our bosses, what have you, about those goals and why that's important?
Certainly. So I've always believed that if you tell the universe what you need and what you want, the universe will help you. So I tell people, because there's no way for people to know, right? They can't, it's not osmosis, they can't read your mind, all of those things. And if you don't make your desires and your wishes known, then opportunities may go past that would have been perfect for you. And some of us see that happen. It's like, oh, wait, I would have wanted that job. But if the people around who are deciding who gets the job, who gets the opportunity to compete for the job, don't even know that you have that interest or desire, right? They can't help you. They can't open that door for you. So it's really important to not only decide what it is that you want, but then to let people know in certain ways. I mean, gosh, it's worked for me throughout my career to be able to tell people. Now you have to be careful, because when I first started working for IBM, I remember I was still at Wharton. I was working part-time for IBM, not even full-time. And one of the folks, IBMers, asked me, oh, so you're an intern, you work with Wharton, what do you want to do? And I said, oh, I want to be the CEO. And she said, it's funny, she looked at me like, I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to back up. When people ask me, I'll tell them not my 20-year dream, but I'll tell them my 5-year step. So yes, you learn in terms of how much to say or not to say in terms of what it is that you're trying to do. But it is important for people to understand that trajectory and that plan so they can actually help you.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit at sort of later stages in your career, some examples of where you were able to kind of have those tough conversations, or what might feel like awkward conversations? Because I think a lot of us, the negotiation piece and how to start it is a struggle. So, kind of, and I know you've given a lot of people advice in this space, but can you talk about some examples at that later stage when you were kind of dealing with those conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. So, here again, back to being clear, it's a matter of saying, what is it you want? So for me, I was trying to, let's see, let me give you a real example. I'm at IBM and I am done my research, and it looks like everybody who runs a P&L that reports to the CEO has actually done an international assignment. But more than that, most of them have gone to Japan. So I don't know what's special about Japan, but something must be. So I decided I needed to figure out how to get a job in Japan as an executive. So the way I would have those conversations is whenever I had any in, and even when it was a stretch, to be able to share what my aspirations were or what I'm interested in, I would tell people when I go to Japan. So, if you're having a conversation with your boss and they're saying, hey, whatever, you're doing a good job on this, you're doing whatever, and you can say, well, yes, I'm trying to build a skill set because ultimately I want to blah, blah, blah. Now, my boss didn't ask me what I wanted to do. They gave me a compliment, right, about one thing that I did. I built it up. Now, you can do that. So the key is just look for little ways to be able to then add in your aspirations to the conversation. And by the way, it's not just your boss. I ultimately did go to Japan, and I was the first Black female to get an international assignment. And it happened because someone else, not even in my chain line, but someone else who I had also told I want to go to Japan at some point, remembered, and he ended up in Japan, right? And therefore put my name on the docket for consideration. So it's not just your boss. Tell other people that work around you as well what you're interested in. And you don't have to walk in to say, hey, look at me, this is what I want to do, everybody. No, I'm not saying that. you have opportunities all the time. You know, people say, hey, what's going on, right? Tell them what's going on. Or they'll say, hey, what are you thinking about doing next? You know, people ask you that. Tell them, because then they can help you.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. And for a lot of people, I think part of it is this imposter syndrome that you talk about, right? I don't want to. Maybe I'm not entitled. Maybe I shouldn't be asking for the position in Japan, and you talk about how you dealt with that in your book, and kind of even where it started, which was really a really emotional story to even read, about your experience, growing up in the 60s, and being the only Black girl in your class. So I think, yeah, just if you can kind of give a little bit of a snapshot of kind of how you dealt with imposter syndrome, and kind of what you thought caused it for you, because I think that may be something others.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, let me just tell everybody, dealt is the wrong word. Deal with, because I still have imposter syndrome from time to time. All right. So, I mean, if you're sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, it's just me and the whole, no, it's not. It rears its head and all the time. So how do I deal with it? It's really 5 steps I talk about in the book, right? But anyway, but the first is just realize you are in really good company. Studies show that most people suffer from imposter syndrome at some point or another. But what's really comes forward in the research is that women feel it more than men, and then women of color experience it the most. All right, so you're in good company. This is not you. It is just, we live our lives in a world that is constantly telling us all the ways in which we are just not quite, and then fill in the blank. Not quite smart enough, not quite young enough, not quite thin enough, not quite athletic enough, not quite, whatever, right? Don't have enough best vacations, don't have the best house. I mean, we're told all these ways in which we are just not quite. So it's no wonder that we suffer from this imposter syndrome. So the way to do is realize that you're in good company. It's not you. Realize it's just an issue. 2, when people open the door for you, when they give you an opportunity, when they invite you to the table, when they do, believe that they've done it because they believe in you. So believe them, right? They obviously feel that you're good enough to explain, then try to believe them. 3, if you don't believe them and you just can't get yourself over it, well, then you know what? Fake it until you make it, right? Just, okay, fine. Now I'm playing a role. I am now manager of this department, and I'm going to put my shoulders back and put on my little thing. And eventually you will know how to do the role. And eventually you will feel confident. But honestly, fake it till you make it, I've used consistently through. And then, if you're still having trouble, right? Find cheerleaders. I'm a big believer in surrounding yourself with people who build you up, not tear you down. But a cheerleader in specific is the person that you can reach out to when you're feeling, oh, I'm just not sure. I don't know if I should take this job. I don't know if whatever. That come back and remind you just how good and capable you are, just how talented you are, what you've done, right? They are literally your raw cheerleaders, right? Go, Angela, you can do this. We all need cheerleaders in our lives. And if you don't have one, then go appoint one. Literally, call up a friend, a sibling, an aunt, a cousin, I don't care, and just say, listen, I don't have a cheerleader. Shellye told me I need one. You're now my cheerleader. Here's what this means. And then be their cheerleader right back. But listen, the world is hard, right? The world is hard. We're dealing with a lot of stuff. And there's no way you can do it all by yourself. I certainly didn't.
Yeah, I think that's such timely advice. You're right, because it's a lot right now that's happening that we're all trying to unpack as well. So we have about 5 minutes before we'll open it up for folks to get into questions. I want to do 2 things before we do to that. I want to kind of get into life as a CEO and your work on boards, and actually 3 things, and some of the impact goals. And then for everyone who's on the call, if you have questions in mind, at 12:30, you can start to turn on your camera, and I'll unmute you as we kind of weave in. But to dive in, sort of life as CEO. So there's a few opportunities that people have generally to talk with someone who's been CEO of a high-tech company like yourself. And you talked a little bit about your plan, but I'm curious, why was it important for you to be CEO in tech, one? And do you feel like you accomplished the goals that you had set out for yourself as CEO of MetricStream, and you had a number of other executive roles prior to that? But as you kind of look at your career, what are sort of the high points that you feel like you were able to accomplish in those roles?
Sure. So first, why CEO of a tech company? Well, I picked tech as my industry because back in the 80s, tech was growing. And I'd heard that, if you pick careers in industries that are growing, typically you have the opportunity to move faster and take on more responsibility if you're good at what you do. So I said, okay, I'm going to pick tech. Good news is it's still tech. Tech is still a growing industry. So that's why tech. I wasn't thinking about, honestly, how hard it would be or the fact that there weren't many people. I wasn't thinking about any of that. It was just, okay, this is what makes sense, so I'm going to go do this. And then in terms of, impact and what have you, I've been fortunate. Yes, I've had a lot of great roles. I've had office level roles. I've been CEO right now on the boards. But what actually gives me the biggest joy, when I say, what am I, proud of? It's not so much the roles. What it is it's the people that have worked for me that have gone on to do fabulous things. It's developing, it's working with people and helping them actually start to do more than they think they can even do. I love that. That's what gives me, kind of that, oh, wonderful. So what CEO, did for me more than anything was literally just giving me the platform to be able to influence and impact in terms of others to be successful, because my style as a leader has always been to be a servant leader. I've always believed that if I can make my team successful, then I will be successful. And if I can help them to be successful, that means helping them grow, developing, coaching. It's all those things, right, as they come through. And so to look at people who have worked for me have now become CEOs or started companies or gone on to, make major impact. That's what gives me the biggest joy and the biggest excitement, frankly. And I see the board work in a similar vein, because I enjoy it, absolutely, but I also like the opportunity it gives me to make an impact. And, I'll give you a quick example, but the very first board I joined, I was 42, I think, public board. Yeah, 42 when I got my first public board. And so here I am, I'm on the board. I'm the only African-American. I'm the youngest person on the board by at least a decade. And I'm like finding my feet, right? Imposter syndrome, absolutely. So I'm faking it till I make it. Well, anyway, this one meeting is a meeting every year. Boards spend time going through the succession planning. So they put up on the screen the names, roles, whatever, of their opportunities of people who are high potential. Well, this chart is literally first letter initial, period, last name. It's just names. You can't tell if they're men, if they're women, their ethnicity. You can't tell anything on this chart. I'm going, is this what they always do? All right, as I look around. And so I just started asking the questions. I can't tell based upon the names, how many of these people are women? Can you just circle them for me? Thank you. And they do that. Then I say, excuse me, can you just tell me who on there is African-American? Okay. Oh, and can you show me who's Hispanic? And can you show me who? So anyway, I did all these, just asking questions, just help me understand. Well, I will tell you, there weren't a whole lot. The next year, not only did they have full names and have everybody coded by what they were, because I'm on the board, so I have an impact, right? But there were more. And so what I'll tell you is the impact is what really drives and motivates me.
Yeah, no, and we're at a time now, you're seeing corporations, issue a ton of statements around social and racial equity. Robert Smith just talked about his proposal on corporations focus on reparations for African Americans. So what, as we sort of look at the time we're in now, what's your thoughts on and it looks like you're doing a ton already, but as others think about their roles, what's your recommendation on how, corporate executives and board members should be thinking about sort of responding to the time that we're in?
Yes, boards, boards and companies, right? But let me talk about companies specifically. Companies have more power than, frankly, I think they even realize to actually influence this discussion and this debate. Pardon me, allergies. And it's time for them to use their power. You know, during the 60s, corporations sat on the sideline. They really said this is a government issue. Good news is, that I see as good news, is businesses are actually engaging. Now, different levels, but at least they're trying to engage. But what I want to encourage businesses to do is to use their power. They pay taxes. And I'm not talking nationally, locally. Locally, they should make sure that local government, the mayors, right, head or police, understand what's important and what they expect. When they see things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, they should use their power, their voices. So those are the kinds of things. And, you know, in the companies that I'm on the board of, we are talking about this. We're talking about this, putting plans in place and actual actions about what we can do for our employees and the communities in which we reside. So now's the time for companies to use their power and weigh in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I want to open it up for questions. If there's anyone who has any, I have a few that I have that I'll continue, but if you have any questions, oh, sorry, it looks like I got one as, so it looks like, what advice would you have to bring your 3 key roles at the inception of any startup?
I'm sorry, what advice? Say that again.
What advice would you have to bring your 3 key roles at the advice of any startup? So Serge, if you wouldn't mind coming on to the video to ask that question, I want to make sure I understand what 3 key roles you're referring to. And so Serge, I'll let you follow up. But while we wait for that question, another question came on. Can you talk a little bit about how do you get on boards? What's that process like in terms of as someone who's seeking that opportunity? What does that look like?
Sure. So first of all, realize that, you know, serving on a board, it's a job. It's a paid job, so it's a job. And it's all about competing for a job. So it's understanding what kind of skill sets boards are looking for. And what I'll tell you is they fall into several categories in general. You know, boards like people who have been CEOs before, but that's not everybody. But it's typically, call it 25% of people who have served on boards have probably been CEOs in the past. If not CEOs, have run significant P&Ls. And why is that? Because CEOs want people around the table who have been in their shoes to provide them advice, counsel, right, and support. Then finance skills are another set of skills. Former CFOs, audit people, right, et cetera. Then typically by company, they want people with experience in their industry. Then you have things like tech, which good news is a lot of boards now want tech experience or digital, you know, e-commerce experience, international, right, all those things. So if you're interested in serving on a board, do the work to understand what are the skill sets boards look for. And then make sure that as you are building your career, that you are getting the experiences that boards look for, so that you will be able to compete well for those roles. And then once you're ready to go after your board, it's just like finding a job. You want to tell everybody that you're interested in serving on a board and why you would be a good person to serve on the board. Yes, the search firms, but frankly, search firms only place about 1/3 of board seats. So you also want to get to people who are in and around boards, current board members, audit partners, you know, people who are consultants right in the boardroom, legal folks. They all tend to know and recommend people when it comes to serving on boards.
Great, thank you. So next we'll go to Serge.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello, thanks for organizing this call, Angela.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always a pleasure. So my question was, I'm actually building a think tank, which will serve as a consulting role, a tech consulting role in Africa for various companies. And my question was, what would you have as an advice when there's a startup that's coming up? What will be, as a co-founder, what will be the three main roles that you will bring on board? The three key roles that will help you build it from the ground up.
Ah, got it.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. So first of all, the roles that you look for are going to depend upon what your skill sets are. So when you're looking to build a company, typically as a founder, you have a set of skills.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that you want to bring are people who can bring complementary skills based upon yours. So if you're coming at this and you are, like I was, sales, marketing, go to market, then I'm not looking for that person, right? What I'm looking for is probably around engineering, right? And because if I have a product, depends on the service, somebody who knows how to actually deliver. And that would be the three that, right, I would focus on. I've got sales, marketing, product, and delivery kind of in the company. So take what your skill set is and then build complementary skill around it. And go slowly. And when I say go slowly, who you bring on as co-founders, it's like getting married. And so if you bring on the wrong people, and I've totally seen this, companies can blow up because the founders break up too early, right? And or somebody comes in as a co-founder, you've all got these equal shares of stock, and then one of them decides, I don't want to do this anymore, it's way too hard. Well, they've got the ownership, and now they're not pitching in. So be really thoughtful and diligent around how you bring on co-founders, because it is a marriage and it's a long haul.
Very good.
Great question. Next, sorry, we'll go to Miss Brian Omosor.
Hi, thank you so much for having this session for us. It actually came at a great time for me as I'm trying to move towards my career to make that change. But what advice do you have for someone making the transition from to secure their first executive role, like to get into the leadership roles?
Okay, that's broad. What I will tell you is what's expected from you as you rise through an organization changes. So one of the reasons why people feel they hit, the ceilings at different points and can't get through, even though they're working just as hard and the whole bit, is because expectations change. When you're earlier in your career, it's all about what you are able to do, what you impact, what you deliver, and how well you work with others. As you start moving into kind of the middle, then it becomes, okay, how well are you actually leading teams? And are you able to get work done through others and through influence, manage across, right, an organization? Then as you move into the executive, call it director, your first executive types of roles, now it's a matter of not just can you get work done through others and do you interact and work with people, et cetera, but are you able to actually translate corporate strategy into your plans and how you operate? Are you able to actually build and design teams to be effective? How well do you do in hiring? Do you actually take risks, and how do you think about mitigating those? I mean, all those things start to come into play. And then as you move up and you're trying to get to higher levels, the vice presidents, whatever, much more starts to get weighed into your focus and ability to not only drive strategy, but actually influence strategy, your own brand and how you're viewed across not just the organization, but outside. That starts to weigh in. I mean, all these, so the expectations of you rises, and you need to make sure that you are building your skills, but also demonstrating those things to be able to be considered, right, for those roles. So that would be how I would answer that question. Is it Marcy?
Marche.
Marche, thank you. Thanks for asking, Marche.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Yep.
Okay, hi, Shellye, it's Liesl. We've been talking on LinkedIn.
How are you?
Big fan, actually. I can't wait to read your book. So I mentor a lot of women, and I had a great mentor in the past, and I was just wondering who your mentors were and what they did to truly make an impact on your career. and how to be a better mentor, I guess. What's your advice for that?
Sure. So first of all, I had a lot of mentors. And I do talk about this in the book. I talk about how to get mentors, to all those things, because, you know, I fortunately figured out early that, oh, one mentor is good, but two's better. And if two's good, you know, four is even better. If four is good, then maybe eight's even better. I mean, so I had mentors all the way through. And I think about mentors in a couple of different ways. A lot of people think of mentors in terms of helping you with what your career plan is. But frankly, I'm also a big believer in getting mentors or advisors to help you do the job you have. Because until you nail the job you have, it's going to be hard to move up to that next job. And even if you do, eventually you're going to get stuck because there's something that you haven't developed or haven't shown, right? That's going to catch up with you. So have mentors that help you plan, yes, but also just help you do the job that you've got. Because no matter what job you have, somebody's had it in the past. In some way, shape, or form, whether it's in your company or outside of your company. Now, in terms of how to be a good mentor, good mentors don't tell people what to do. Good mentors just ask questions, give people things to consider, right? Good mentors are ones that are able to help people not just, you know, decide here's what I need to do, but really help them think more broadly about their choices and their decisions. So a lot of people are good mentors. The piece that I find people struggle with is actually being a good mentee. There are a lot of bad mentees out there. And if you're a bad mentee, you lose your mentors. So anyway, but yes, the book talks about both of those. It also tells you how to be a mentee.
All right.
Oh, sorry, we have another question from Jamil. Is it Jamil?
Yes, it is. Hi, Shellye. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. My question is about sponsorship. Can you talk about how sponsorship has played a role in your career progression and also in the context of boards?
Sure. So sponsorship, and just to be clear, here's how I view them. You know, mentors are people who indeed can give you advice, right, are helpful and supportive with regards to your career, what you're doing, what you're planning to do. Sponsors are people that actually pull you through. They actually open a door for you, right? They create opportunities. They're the people who talk about you when you're not in the room. So sponsors have definitely played a role for me as well. So I've had mentors and sponsors. Gosh, my first, the first sponsor that I realized, because I say that because a lot of us have sponsors and we just don't even know it. But the first sponsor that I realized, his name was Ken Thornton. And Ken, it was at IBM. And Ken absolutely helped in terms of behind the scenes on opening opportunities for me. So I know that happened. One of my, probably one of my biggest sponsors in terms of impact on my career was Bill Campbell. And the door that Bill Campbell opened was introducing me to Kleiner Perkins. And it was through Kleiner Perkins that I ended up with my first CEO job. So, you know, sponsors have absolutely played a role for me. And the good news is, if you choose your mentors right, and you're a good mentee, and you are really good at your job so that you tend to move up, a lot of mentors can become sponsors because they now want to claim you. They want to say, oh, Jamil, oh yeah, well, I've been giving her advice on the side, right? Because everybody's saying what a good job you're doing. So they want to take credit. And in doing that, it now makes them look even better if you continue to move up. So they're going to be helpful. So mentors can actually turn into sponsors. So anyway, hopefully that gives you a view.
Great. All right, next we'll go to Sarah.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, great. Well, thank you both so much. Can't wait for your book, Shellye, and Angela, thank you very much for hosting. So I have I have lots of questions, so you know, please do answer any part or anyone. The first one is I'm an aspiring ally in the move toward racial equity and social justice. I do have an opportunity as an executive, as an advisor, as board member, and also as a recovering technologist myself, to have some type of a role, and would like to do something deliberately, purposefully to help bring. Well, it's not bring, but how do I help to clear the path, to remove barriers potentially? How do I basically be an ally from your perspective, if you've had any advice for right now? And then a second question is related kind of more broadly to where we're at, potentially in a global movement related to the state of capitalism, shared value, inclusive economies, et cetera, sort of in broad strokes. And would there be advice that you would give our generation, 40 years old, as far as maybe not leaning in, so to speak, and actually not continuing to perpetuate sort of norms and practices that maybe aren't as helpful if we want to sort of reimagine society?
Okay, so the first one, with regards to how to be a good ally, what I'll tell you is a couple things. One, open doors. I call it making space. Make space for people, right, who don't look like you. And making space is everything from in a meeting or a conversation. If you see that someone's voice is either not being heard or being talked over, or is just not able to contribute, right? Make space, invite them in, actually set them up so they can indeed participate. Open the doors to opportunities. To the extent that you have, there are opportunities that you see, there are important task forces that are put together, whatever it is, make sure you're reaching out to be able to pull people in. That absolutely helps. And thirdly, when you're seeing behavior that borders on harassment or bias or whatever, helping to call it out. And when I say call it out, be careful. I'm not saying call it out to say, hey, that is biased or that is racist, or that doesn't help, because then people just feel attacked. No. But it's just asking the question that's more of, maybe you didn't realize, but when you said X, Y, Z, right, here's how that could have been interpreted, right? You can do these things very nicely and very professionally that are coaching. So those are just a couple. With regards to the other, in terms of the broader, issues or broader kind of movements in terms of what do we do and how do we have, it's have your voices heard on what you feel is important. I do believe that a company's role is, yes, to the shareholders, but it's also to employees, to customers, and the community at large. And asking, how companies are talking to all four stakeholders, right? And holding people accountable in the roles that you have. What are we actually doing? If you serve on boards, what is your organization actually doing to help with racial equity? What is your company doing with regards to the environment? What is it doing with, it's the questions that you want to ask to let people know what's important to you when you're bringing a position of power to the table. So those would be some simple things.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And we have about 10 more minutes for any additional questions. For those who may have some, you can either chat them to me or join to request to put your video on. But while you're waiting,
Angela, let me do a quick plug, and that is, for those of you who are interested in my book, I've actually made an arrangement with MOAD, the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. So if you order a book from them before the 15th of September, I'm going to actually go to their bookstore and sign them before they put them in the mail to be delivered. So you'll get a signed copy.
That's great. Yeah, so make sure, and I think the information will follow up after this in the email with a survey and details on how you all can purchase that at the MOAD as well. Yep. So as we talked a lot about, sort of the corporate response right now, and your advisory board member to CBE as well. And I'm just, as we look at sort of the nonprofit worlds, community organizations, and just even us as just sort of individuals, as we look at sort of what what I guess is the call to action that you would have for CBE and other organizations who are sort of looking at this time and looking at how we can be effective in elevating our community?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that if everybody just does one thing, and honestly, it doesn't matter if you push the needle forward an inch or a mile, but just do one thing. It would be amazing the kind of impact that we could have. So when you say what to do, there is so much to be done that it isn't so much, okay, here's, do everything. If anything, get narrow. Just pick something that you're going to do first and then really work that so that you can truly make an impact. So if you look at CBE, for instance, right? Coalition for Black Excellence is really all about trying to promote, support, enable all of us, right, to be successful, right, to achieve, etc. So, okay, as you look at your community here, I would almost do the poll, which is, okay, what are the top 4 things on everybody's mind that either is a stumbling block or an obstacle because you're trying to uplift?
Yep.
Collect them, look at them and say, okay, pull it together, rank them, fine. Here are the top 3 that the whole folks said. What can we do about the first one? And then just do that. Because the problem is when you try to do everything, all of the effort tends to get dulled. If you can do one thing and drive it to impact, do the next thing and drive it to impact, now you build momentum and then you can expand. It's just like building a business. Serge asked the question. It's all about crawl, walk, and then run. So crawl is just the first step. Okay, what can we do at the first step that we can just get a win, right? Prove that what we're doing makes sense. And then you start to walk. Okay, now I got this behind me, I can build momentum. I see the state that we're in right now is very much the same. And so what am I doing? Because trust me, I ask myself, so what am I going to do? And what I'm doing is I'm focusing on police harassment. A lot of people are focused on lethal force, right? Abuse of power, all that, which is absolutely needs to be focused on. But I didn't see much going on focusing on how do we reduce police harassment of folks on a day-to-day, right, kind of basis. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. So literally, I called up a few friends that I thought could be helpful in this effort and say, here's what I want to focus on. Will you help me? And then I reached out to San Jose and said, crawl, walk, run. All right, I want to work with San Jose, one city, one place. Let's see if we can figure out how do we improve it. And if we can do that, then it can become a model that we can then walk, try other places, right? Who knows? And then run. And so as a result, we're actually making impact. I've got the mayor, the police chief, city mayor, all on board. And we are absolutely digging into, just like I told you guys, what are the top issues? How can we go focus? How do we shine a light? I'm a big believer, if you shine a light on a problem, it will get better. So how do we shine a light? How do we bring transparency, right? And visibility to what's happening? So anyway, so stay tuned, but that's what I am personally trying to go do. So everybody on this call, we all have more power than we realize. We all do. So pick one thing. It can be one thing in your company. It can be one thing in your church. It can be in your neighborhood. I mean, trust me, just one thing.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, that's great advice, because I feel like you whiteboard all of the problems and potential solutions, and it can get overwhelming, and so yeah, that's it's a very timely advice to say, let's just focus in. We have another question. This is about your book. Would the book be available in the UK, or is there an electronic version?
So it'll be available in the UK on October 6th. There's just no pre-order available. Pre-order is only in the US, but on October 6th, it'll be there for you to buy.
Okay,
great. And thank you for your support.
Yeah, well, Shellye, this has been such a great conversation. Sorry, one more question. It looks like this came in. When will the book be available for those that want to pre-order? I think that's available now.
It's available now. And as a matter of fact, I'll make a plea. Pre-orders mean so much to a new author because it tells publishers what they should print and all that kind of good stuff. So if you think you might be interested in the book, please pre-order it. If you don't like it, just reach back out to me. I'll give you your money back. But I honestly believe there is a lot in there that will help each of you. Because if you're on this call, odds are you have ambitions, you have aspirations. There are things that you want in your life. And what I talk about in the book is how to improve the odds to actually get it. And I share just a lot of very practical things. So I think it will definitely be helpful.
Absolutely. So I'll add in a link so that you all can get access to the book as well.
Yeah.
So
And
Shellye,
Angela, can I share one last
oh,
tip
yeah,
before we
absolutely.
go?
Absolutely.
All right. So let me share just one tip that I think can help everybody. So many times we don't tell people what we want, right? Well, there's a really easy way to make sure, even if you don't tell people what you want, make sure they at least know what you actually do. All right, because just because you are working hard, we're told, get your job, do this, put your head down, work hard, and all will happen. It won't. Ambition and hard work are not enough. You need to let people know what you do. So a really simple way to do that is by answering the questions that you get asked every day. Angela, how are you? What's going on? What's happening? And you answer, I'm fine, great, good. But the answer is no, you aren't fine, great, or good. What are you? You are excited because you just landed a new client. How are you? I'm exhausted. Oh my gosh, we just finished implementing a new tech system that is going to actually reduce our time to market by X amount of time. How are you? Oh my God, I am so pleased because we were able to blah, 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 blah. Do you see the point? Take advantage. It's 20 seconds. Tell people what you're actually doing. Why do you do that? Because then they will remember you. They'll think, oh yeah, Angela's the one who gets deals closed, right? So-and-so is the one who always manages to get the tech systems in on time, right? So-and-so, that's what you want. It's fine that they know that you're fine or you're okay or you're happy, but tell them what you do. That's how you get the opportunity for people to open doors for you, because they'll say, we need somebody who can do X, Y, or Z. And somebody will say, oh, I just talked to somebody. That's how it happens, team. So please let people know what you do, and you can do it not by bragging, not by saying, look at me, but by just answering the questions they ask you all the time.
I love it. Great advice from a woman who has had a tremendous career. We really appreciate you, Shellye. Appreciate your book and your vulnerability and your willingness to just always pour into this community. And we're so excited to see how you continue to develop even at this stage, if that's even possible.
Listen, I'm always learning. So absolutely. And listen, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. But if you do, reference this. Don't just send a quick link, but tell me who you are. And I'm happy to connect. I try to share a lot of stuff out there, just inspirational tips, ideas. My whole focus at this phase is honestly, I'm trying to help enable others to get what they want out of life. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And with that, we will end it. I will follow up with everyone via email with additional details. Please fill out the survey so we know your thoughts on this program, and stay tuned for additional CBE programs. You can follow us at cbenonprofit.org, on Instagram and Facebook at Experience CBE. And with that, we'll call it a day. Thank you all.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.